Hello and welcome. In this lecture, we are going to be creating our very own UI. I've got it here in a tab. I'm not going to show you because I don't want to influence you into creating the same sort of UI as me. You're going to see it by the end of the lecture, but you can imagine it's going to look something a bit like these Material UI layouts that we have got here in the sticker sheet. All right, without further ado, let's dive in and get to the meat. Okay, so we took a look at the sticker sheet last time, and what we want to do is actually create our first design for a UI picker, basically to pick the painting that we want to load up. Basically, our main menu is going to be picking a painting. Now, how are we going to go about doing this? Well, the first thing to do is set up a new Figma painting. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new Figma painting to create a design frame inside of. Let's go to the main section. Now here you'll notice I'm using the Figma app on Windows, and you can install this as well, or you can just use the website. I'm going to go ahead and rename the new untitled thing that we've just created, and it's going to be called the Painting Picker. Okay, so this is the UI element we're trying to design. Now, how do we start? We've got this blank, completely blank canvas. Well, I think the best way, you could just go ahead and add in elements, but I think the best way is to start with the empty frame that we've got from Daydream. And you can see there's some backgrounds here that are very, very useful and we might want to go with. One little trick actually is here you'll notice there are 2 pages in this design, and it's hard to see, but at the top of our hierarchy on the left, you can expand out the VR template and see there are 2 pages, one of which is the symbols page. If you go over to the symbols page, then what you're going to find is that there are some things that you can reuse in here very, very, very easily. I'm going to go ahead and copy the Daydream home world, bring it over to the Painting Picker tab, and paste it on in there. So what we've got ourselves is a very basic home world rectangle that we can draw over, just use as a backdrop of roughly the right size to work with. And the other thing I'm going to do here is take our guide and range of motion thing, copy that and bring it over to the Painting Picker as well. Now you'll notice this is very unhelpful because it's just gone and overridden the whole thing. So I'm going to select the root of this guide component and drag it out first of all outside of the Daydream home world, so they're not nested one within the other. It's just a neatness thing, not particularly necessary. Now if you select this guide and range of motion, you'll notice that it is an object in and of itself, and then it has other things childed under it. But that object has got a background in the design tab where I can just hit the eye icon and hide that entirely. And in fact, what we can do is we can toggle off the guides on and off when we need them or don't need them. So I'm going to leave them on for now. I'm going to lock the background so that we don't accidentally move it around. I'm going to lock the guide too so we don't accidentally move that around. And now we can design over the top of both of these. So that's quite useful. That's a good starting point. And you can draw in your own components, or you can use components from the sticker sheet, either on the symbols page, or you can copy things from the VR template with the example layouts. That can be quite useful too. Don't forget that there are lots of hints about button sizes, typography sizes, all of that hanging around in this. Just have a read of the sticker sheet. It's very, very interesting, and definitely have a listen to the Google talk. But before we go any further, I'm going to challenge you. And I'm going to challenge you to create a picture picker. So think about the functionality you need in a sort of picking dialogue or picking menu screen. What have you seen in other painting applications? What have you seen in save game loading? What app are you using for inspiration? You may just choose to stick with Material UI as the basis, or the sticker sheet as your basis, but you might want to go a bit more adventurous if you're feeling adventurous and use a different app as your inspiration. Start from the inside out. What do I mean by this? I mean that you should start designing from your kind of highest priority piece of functionality. Think about how that's going to look, where you're going to position that, and then go to your next step of functionality and you can position that relative to it and so on and so forth. I often find start with the most important thing. Don't try and figure out a layout before you know what goes in that layout. Try and do it from the inside out. You'll see what I do in the challenge solution if you're still not sure what I mean. Use the sticker sheet as guides, again using all that information that's in there, using the font sizes, etc. And create a design. So pause the video and give this a shot. Okay, welcome back. So first things first, let's create / capture some requirements. You might need to capture requirements if you've got a designer that you're working with. You might want to talk to them. Selecting a previous painting is going to be important for our functionality. We're going to need to see a painting preview. Going to need multiple pages of paintings potentially. There might be lots of paintings. Adding a new painting and of course deleting a painting when you are done with it. So that is the functionality. Let's go ahead and see if we can create our painting picker. First of all, what's my doing it inside out to assemble a design, thinking about how do I select a previous painting? Well, that seems related to the next 3 points, to be honest. Let's think about it. So we are seeing some design patterns here in our layout that you can lay out a grid basically. Seems like a good idea. The grid's probably better than a list of things. So I'm going to take this 3x3 grid. I quite like the size of the things there. 4x4 looks too small, so the previews will be too small. And anything else doesn't quite look the right aspect ratio for a painting, so 3x3. And I'm going to copy that grid and paste it on into my painting picker design. You can see it resides nicely, well, kind of nicely within the bounds of my comfort zone. I just have to move it to the center, try and center it there. And as we know, the center is actually 6 degrees down from the horizon. If you go and have a look at the sticker sheet, that's how we basically defined it. That you can see here that the UI center is the 6 degrees down from the horizon. So that's helpful. And next up, what do we want to be able to do? Multiple pages of paintings. Now, you could have some forwards and back buttons. That's definitely one way of doing it. I think that's a little bit clumsy. What we can do instead is have just some input from the hand controller. So if we're doing the left and right on the analog stick, that could move us backwards and forwards, in which case we need some feedback about which page we're on. I think the perfect thing for this would either be the scroll bar that we've got along here or these dots. Seeing as it's a discrete number, I quite like the look of these navigation dots. I think I saw them in the symbols page as well. So here we go, the navigation pagination dots. I'm going to copy that, go over to our painting picker and just drop those pagination dots underneath our cards. You'll notice they've got a nasty background to them, so we're going to remove the background. It's just there in the design pane. You can just make it invisible, no background. So we've got our dots. That's great. That's going to tell us what page we're currently on. I find that very useful. Okay, so we have got our first 3 points of the design basically nailed. We don't need to do anything else there. Adding a new painting. How are we going to do that? And deleting a painting. Well, this looks like the optimal thing for a button of some sort, and we've got some buttons here. We've got a search button, nav button, and other types of button which are just textual. I quite like the idea of using an icon button, so what I've included in your resources here is a link to the Material.io website, which has a bunch of icons that you can search for. You often have to use a few names because it's very finicky on its search. And what we want to do is find some buttons that would be appropriate for the meanings of adding and deleting. Just keeps the UI nice and compact, I feel. So we can look for add. There's a few things in here, but nothing much. Aha, here's an add button. I like this one. You could use any of the others if you liked as well. And the crucial thing here is to get hold of the SVG, which is the scalable vector graphics. Very, very helpful. Can drag that on into our design, maybe into the painting picker. It's not quite helping. I need to go over to the painting picker first. And in fact, let's bring over, first of all, the type of button we want. I like this navigation style buttons. I'm going to copy those over into the painting picker and position them down near the, just after the, what we're calling those, the navigation pagination dots. Okay, so we've got that button, and we're going to have a second button for adding and deleting. So I've got 2 back buttons here. Why did that not work? My copy and paste did not work. Let's try it one more time. Select the navigation back buttons, copy, paste isn't working. That's interesting. Is that because I don't have the right thing selected? I don't know. Let's go and copy it instead from the sticker sheet. That worked. So for some reason it doesn't like pasting that component twice. Okay, so we are going to just go ahead and select them both and try and center them with a reasonable gap between them. In fact, what kind of gap do we need? You could go and have a look at the exact gap necessary, but I'm not going to bother with that. And then we want to just go ahead and change out the icon. So how can we do that? We can expand out what we've got here, and you can see that there is this icon back arrow here that I want to go ahead and replace. And I can do this by going over to the Material UI website. I've downloaded an SVG, and I can just go ahead and drag this into Figma, and there you go. It has gone ahead and imported it. So having imported it, we can now try and move it into the right place. So it's gone under the pagination dots. That's not where I wanted it. I want it under this back arrow navigation. I'm actually going to rename that because it's not a very helpful name. I'm going to call this the delete button, because that is a more helpful name. And this baseline add, that's under the wrong one then. I'll put it under the add button, which will be on the right. I want to put it under this right button, which I'm going to rename to the add button. Now this baseline add, I'm going to rename as well to have the same naming convention as we've got here already. You see IC arrow back. I'm going to see IC underscore, that probably stands for icon, and it's going to be add instead. And then what we want to do is look at the properties of our arrow back, what size is it, etc. So we can see that it's 21, 21, 54, 54. So it's 21, 21 offset, 54 by 54 in height and width. So let's change that. It's going to be a 21, 21, 54, 54. And that's put it in the right place, the right size, but the wrong opacity by the looks of it. Let's click on the arrow and look for our opacity of said arrow. Not getting much information about the opacity here. In the fill, we've got 65%. Copy that, go over to the add, and change the fill in the details pane to 65%, and that looks about right now. So I can delete the back arrow. Great, so our add button looks about right. Now I just do the same for delete. So I'm going to look for a trash can type icon. Let's look for trash, got restore from trash, nope. Maybe the bin, nope. Maybe delete, just have to look around. There you go, delete is the right one. I'll select the delete icon and download it. And then I can import that over into Figma onto our delete button. I'm going to rename it to the IC underscore delete. And I'm going to copy across the shape and size from the arrow back. I seem to remember it was 21, 24, 21, 54, 54, seems to be the right size. And the opacity for the fill was around about the 65 mark. So that seems to be right, and I can delete the IC arrow back. So now what we've got is a delete button, an add button, and they seem to be about the right size and the right style. The style seems to be in keeping. It's all within the eye's comfort zone. Now, one thing that I might want to add, just a little bonus that I didn't add to my requirements, is an exit button, so basically exit application. And I could stick this over in the neck, basically in the neck comfort zone, more of the curiosity zone. So how do we do that? Well, I'm just thinking that I might do it with some text. So what types of text do we know of that are useful? I might want to just copy some text, you see, so that we get the right formatting. So I'm going to go over to the VR template. I'm going to look for an example of some text. There's some headline, title, subheading. I think we want probably the headline style text. So I'm going to copy the headline, go over to the painting picker, paste it in here and move it into the curiosity zone to the right. And I'm going to call this, let's see, exit application. In fact, we don't want all caps, that's a bit aggressive. Exit application, just in title case. And I can probably go ahead and change the fill to white so that it shows up better against the background. See if that has worked. Doesn't appear to have worked. I need to have selected the text first, maybe. And change the fill. So let's select all the text, change the fill to white, like so. Okay, so we've got an exit application, and underneath that, let me just center it. Underneath, we're going to need an exit type icon. So exit, or exit to app, or maybe quit. Nothing under there, so I think the exit icon was best. There we go. I'm going to select it, download it, you get the routine, and copy it over into Figma. And here, the icon size, I'm going to go for a bit bigger than what we had already. And if I hold down Alt, scales from the middle, hold down Shift, it keeps the aspect ratio. And I want the color to be white. I'm going to change the color over to white as well. So we've got an exit application, basically icon over on the right. And I want to make the icon a child of the text, so they move together. How can I do this? Maybe I can, well, one easy way is going to be select them both, right click, and then group the selection and rename the group to something. So it's going to be the exit button over on the right there. Okay, so we've got ourselves an exit button, we've got ourselves the main selection dialog and an add and delete button. I think we're golden. We've got ourselves a working design that we can work from, and to see it in all of its glory, we could just go and hide the guide range of motion so we can see our exit application and the Daydream Homeworld. Now, we may iterate this design still, but it is a starting point and I'm happy with it. Hopefully you are happy with your designs too, and maybe they're a little bit different to mine. It'd be great if they were, if you'd chosen to do something different, or now that you've done it with Material UI, maybe you'll choose to go and imitate the style of another game now that you have your skill and your confidence using Figma.